is Shotzzy a superstar? You're gonna have the answer after this video. This question is absolutely plaguing the Call of Duty competitive community right now after the recent series Shotzzy obviously had against the Toronto Ultra, with Patty P. Aches, the villain in the Call of Duty community, saying Shotzzy is still not a superstar, despite him doing it against the best teams, putting up crazy stats and all those sorts of things. But as I said, we're gonna figure out exactly if Shotzzy is a superstar. And first, we have to run through this quick exercise. On screen, you see the stats of 4 players dating all the way back to Cold War up until this current season, this current day. And of course, these stats are very basic. You have your KDs and your Slayer rating to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of just the general numbers of these players. Stats aren't everything. Of course, the eye test matters, but for the sake of this, I think it does the trick. And I want you to think about 2 things as you look at these stats. 1, which of these players do you think is Shotzzy? And 2, which of these players do you think is considered a superstar by a majority of the community? Really take in these numbers and think about it. If you want to look at these even more, you can definitely pause the video. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in 2 players that we absolutely know are superstars. I don't think anyone can deny these 2 players have been superstars over the recent years of the CDL. And these are their numbers compared to the players that I originally showed you. Cellium and Pred's numbers, obviously, I mean, looking at these numbers, they way stand out among the other 4 players that I have above you, the 4 mystery players. So by looking at their numbers, Cellium and Pred, compared to these 4 mystery players, which of these players do you think is Shotzzy? And are any of them considered superstars when you look at the numbers compared to Cellium and Pred? I'm going to venture a guess, and I'm going to say you likely said either all of them maybe are superstars, depends on your knowledge or how you look at numbers, or you're gonna say probably compared to Cell and Pred, these guys are not superstars, like all 4 of these players when you look at those numbers. I mean, there's a very big difference. And now what if I told you none of those players are actually Shotzzy? Player number 1 is Simp, one who probably everybody considers a superstar. Player number 2 is Insight, someone I probably would venture a guess that not many people think is a superstar. Player number 3 is Abizi, a player that people might go back and forth on, but I would guess in recent years, at least from last year, people probably think Abizi is a superstar. And player number 4 is Method, Zinni, obviously not playing this current season. But looking at all 4 of these numbers, they're all pretty much in the same ballpark, right? A little bit of differences here and there, but I would venture a guess that 2 out of these 4 players are widely considered superstars by most fans. And now here are Shotzzy's numbers on screen. As you can see, his numbers pretty much just fit in perfectly with the other ones, right? His numbers are right about the same, on the same level, in the same tier as these other 4 mystery players. Hence why you probably did think Shotzzy's numbers were in there. And the point that I'm trying to make with kind of showing you these numbers and leading you along this false road to thinking Shotzzy is in there is, at the very least, stats is not going to determine who is a superstar, right? Cellium and Pred, I mean, their stats are insane. I don't think you can doubt they're superstars. When you are putting up numbers like that, like Cell, like Pred, you're going to be considered a superstar. But Simp, Abizi, these are guys that probably most consider superstars, Shotzzy as well, and their numbers look nothing like the other 2 I showed you on screen. But like I said in the beginning of the video, I told you you're going to be able to answer the question, is Shotzzy a superstar, at the end? And I think there's things we have to figure out first, and that is, what is the parameters of a superstar, right? Everyone's going to have a different definition. And I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. Number 1 is just solely looking at the stats, the numbers they put up. And I think in this first section of the video, we kind of debunked that part. Number 2 is going to be, and this is for me probably what I look at most, are these players in MVP conversations consistently year in, year out, right? Guys like Cellium, Pred, Scrap since he's come into the league, Simp, Abizi, Hydra, those guys are always in MVP conversations. Maybe not every single season, but over the course of their career, especially in the CDL era, those guys have been in MVP conversations probably at least 50% of the time, if not more. And then number 3, and this one is the big one that I think we look at when we look at in other sports as well, is, does this player transcend the game, right? Is this player a face of the game, someone that you would notice if you saw them online outside of a match? If you just saw them out on the street, would you recognize this person? And obviously that depends on your level of fandom, but I think that's another way to define a superstar, as someone who really stands out above the rest in terms of that brand and who they are as a person. Now, obviously, you can look at a guy, like I said, Methods. No offense to Zinni, but I don't think Zinni would ever be considered a superstar in the CDL era, that is. I would say you probably are going to recognize Zinni if you saw him online. Obviously, with content and gaming, it's a bit different. But when you look at players in the league, if they're really good, they have a really strong brand, they are very recognizable, I think that plays a part into who you are as a superstar. So taking an all-encompassing look at the players in the CDL, look at the numbers they put up, look at if they're winning, if they're losing, the teams they're on, the brand, the face that they have putting forward in the league, as well as just sort of, are they in MVP conversations? Are they always at the top of their game? You have to look at all those when you're considering who a superstar is. And obviously, specifically with the third point that I made about the branding being the face of the league, Shotzzy is by far going to be #1 in that conversation. So when you absolutely consider that, Shotzzy's 100% a superstar. That also brings into question, this is something Aches brought up, which I actually do agree with. It is a bit weird to consider 20% of the league as superstars, right? If you consider 10 players a superstar, that's 10 out of 48 players, right? You're looking at nearly 20% of the league. I think that is 20% of the league as a superstar, which seems pretty insane when you compare it to other sports and things like that. You would think superstars should be maybe 5% of the league, right? 3% of the league. The top 1% of the league should be considered superstars. And I know there's only 48 to like 60 players by the end of the season that play in the CDL. So percentage-wise, it is very hard to judge, right? If you had 1,000 players in the league, you probably would have the same amount of superstars, right? So the percentage would go down the more players you add to the league. And I do think there is a major difference that needs to be said between what a superstar is and what a star is, right? There's nothing wrong with just being a star. There is nothing absolutely wrong with that. I think that's something, especially fans, because I imagine the players don't really care about this conversation that much. For fans, you get really butthurt when your favorite player or a player on your favorite team is called a star and not a superstar, right? OpTic fans, no hate towards you, but you guys are way too invested over whether or not Shotzzy is a superstar. At the end of the day, what Ache says, what another person says shouldn't matter about what you think about the players on your team. If you think Shotzzy is a superstar and you have a reason to back that up, kind of like I told you in this video, you're 100% valid in your thought. But if you think Shotzzy isn't a superstar, especially if you consider the second thing that I mentioned earlier, which is being in MVP conversations, Shotzzy hasn't been in MVP conversations since he won in 2019, maybe a little bit in Cold War, but if you look back over recent years, I don't think there's ever been a time we were like, oh yeah, Shotzzy's going to be MVP. He has big series here and there, but compared to Cellium, compared to Pred, Hydra, Scrap, Abizi, Simp, like Shotzzy's not nearly in conversations of being the best player in the league nearly as much as those guys. So for that reason, if you don't think Shotzzy's a superstar, I think that's 100% valid as well. It all comes back to the same question is, what are your parameters for a superstar? And I'm not going to lie to you. I came into this video thinking to myself, I was going to come on here and I was going to say, I don't think Shotzzy is a superstar, but I took the time this morning and last night I laid in bed and thought about this for a couple hours after watching the flank. The more I thought about it, the more I sort of developed my idea of what I think a superstar is. And I think Shotzzy does fit into the category of a superstar. The guy puts up good numbers year in, year out. He's probably always in that conversation for top 10, maybe not top 5 or MVP, but he's always in that top 10, top 12 conversation, which is obviously really, really good in a league of 48 to 60 players throughout the course of a season. And then also, the dude is the face of the league. He really transcends COD. I think he is like I said, he's the face of the league. He's the biggest name in the league. Everyone knows who he is, especially even people outside of the COD community might have an idea of who Shotzzy is. I guess I don't really know anyone personally that can confirm this, but I would imagine even people outside COD who maybe watch other esports probably have somewhat of an idea who Shotzzy is because he is the face of OpTic gaming on the professional scene at this point in time. So yeah, I think if I had to personally pick, I think I'm going to say Shotzzy is a superstar. He might not be in MVP conversations, which I think I kind of value most in this conversation, but because he is probably by far #1 at being a transcendent of just playing in the map, right? Just what he does in game. He transcends that 100%. I think he definitely deserves that superstar spot. But like I said, man, if you agree with Aches and you don't think Shotzzy is a superstar, as long as you have reason to think that and you can speak it in a way that makes sense. I think what Aches says makes sense. I'm not going to lie to you. I think what he says makes sense. I think people want to hate on Aches because he does tend to backtrack or maybe not admit when he's wrong, which can take away some of the credibility. But I think what he said last night on the flank makes sense. 20% of the league being superstars is a bit crazy in my opinion. There needs to be a difference between superstars and stars. We're way too willing to just say, this guy's a superstar, this guy's a superstar, this guy's a superstar. Like, just because a player is good doesn't mean they're a superstar, right? Just because a player is good every year doesn't mean they're a superstar. Kleenex has been great every single season. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think Kleenex is a superstar. Same thing with Insight. There's nothing wrong with being a star. There's nothing wrong with playing your role on a really good team. Not everyone can be superstars, and I think that's something we all have to accept. But either way, let me know what you think about this debate. Do you think Shotzzy is a superstar? Put it in the comments down below. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like CDL content, sub to the channel. That's all I talk about here. And with that being said, hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.